Have you ever wondered what ignited the spark of the American Revolution? It's a question that has intrigued historians for centuries. The American Revolution was not just a sudden outbreak of violence. It was a culmination of events, ideologies, and passions that culminated into a fierce struggle for freedom. This video will take you on a journey back in time to explore these significant events. So strap in, history enthusiasts, for an intriguing exploration. Let's delve into the timeline of the American Revolution to answer that question. Our journey begins in the early 1760s, with the seeds of discontent already sown. Picture this: the American colonies, nestled under the watchful eye of the British Empire, are beginning to chafe under the weight of foreign governance. The French and Indian War has just ended, leaving Britain heavily in debt. To recoup some of these losses, the Crown decides to tax the colonies. Enter the Sugar Act of 1764. This act, which placed taxes on molasses, sugar, and other imports, was met with outrage and resistance. The colonists argued that without representation in the British Parliament, these taxes were unjust. This rallying cry, "No taxation without representation," would become a cornerstone of the revolution. But the British didn't stop there. In 1765, they introduced the Stamp Act, levying a tax on all paper goods. This act was met with even more resistance, sparking protests and boycotts throughout the colonies. The colonists saw this as another example of Britain's tyranny, fueling their growing desire for independence. As tensions escalated, the British attempted to quell the rebellion with a show of force, stationing troops in Boston. This only fanned the flames of rebellion, culminating in the infamous Boston Massacre in 1770, where British soldiers killed 5 colonists. This tragic event was widely publicized, further stoking the fires of revolution. Then in 1773 came the Boston Tea Party. In response to the Tea Act, which gave the British East India Company a monopoly on tea sales in the colonies, a group of colonists famously dumped 342 chests of tea into the Boston harbor. This act of defiance was a direct challenge to British authority and marked a turning point in the relationship between the colonies and the Crown. These events set the stage for a revolution that would change the course of history. The seeds of discontent had grown into a sprawling tree of rebellion, its roots firmly planted in the ideals of liberty and self-governance. This was the beginning of the American Revolution, a war that would ultimately lead to the birth of a new nation. The year is 1775, and the first shots of the American Revolution have been fired. The dawn of the American Revolution begins with the battles of Lexington and Concord, a series of skirmishes between the British Redcoats and American Minutemen in Massachusetts. The air is thick with tension and the scent of gunpowder. The first shot, famously known as the shot heard round the world, marked the point of no return. The battle cry of freedom echoes across the 13 colonies, igniting the spark of revolution. In the wake of these battles, the Second Continental Congress convenes in Philadelphia. The Congress takes a monumental step, the formation of the Continental Army. This unified force, led by the capable and charismatic George Washington, would carry the torch of revolution against the might of the British Empire. The American colonies, once separate and distinct, now band together in a common cause, the pursuit of liberty. As the war intensifies, so does the desire for independence. The colonies are no longer fighting for their rights as British subjects. They are now fighting for their rights as free and independent states. The pen becomes as mighty as the sword as Thomas Jefferson drafts the Declaration of Independence. This remarkable document proclaims to the world the colonies' resolve to be free from British rule. It lists the grievances against King George III and asserts the fundamental rights of all men: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Declaration of Independence is more than just a piece of parchment. It's a beacon of hope, a rallying cry, and a bold statement of defiance against tyranny. The bell tolls on the 4th of July, 1776, as the Declaration is adopted. The sound resonates across the colonies, marking a new chapter in their history. They are no longer British colonies, they are the United States of America. With the signing of the Declaration, the American colonies had officially declared their independence from Britain. The revolution was no longer a distant rumble. It was a roaring blaze, illuminating the path towards a new nation. The American Revolution had truly ignited. The early years of the war were difficult for the American forces, but the tide began to turn in their favor. The Battle of Saratoga, fought in the fall of 1777, was a pivotal moment in the American Revolution. The American forces, led by General Horatio Gates, faced off against the mighty British Army. The Americans, though outnumbered and outgunned, held their ground. After a grueling 2 weeks of battle, the British forces surrendered. This victory was a morale booster for the American forces, proving to them and the world that they could stand toe-to-toe with the mighty British Army. As word of the American victory at Saratoga spread, it caught the attention of a significant ally, France. Seeing the potential in the American cause, France formally allied with the Americans in February of 1778, providing much-needed military support and financial aid. The alliance with France not only bolstered the American forces but also brought the war onto the global stage, making it more difficult for Britain to focus solely on the American front. The winter at Valley Forge in 1777 to 1778, though a time of immense hardship, was also a turning point for the American forces. The Continental Army, under the leadership of General George Washington, endured freezing temperatures, lack of supplies, and disease. Yet it was during this winter that the army emerged as a more cohesive and disciplined force. The troops trained rigorously under Baron von Steuben, a Prussian military officer, who transformed the ragtag group of militiamen into a professional army. These events marked a turning point in the war, as the American forces began to gain the upper hand. The Battle of Saratoga showed that they were a force to be reckoned with. The alliance with France provided them with the resources they desperately needed, and the winter at Valley Forge, though brutal, solidified their resolve and unity. Each of these moments, in their own way, turned the tide of the American Revolution. The year is 1781, and the American forces, led by General George Washington, are on the brink of victory. The final chapters of the American Revolution are about to unfold, and they are nothing short of epic. In the late summer of 1781, the siege of Yorktown begins. The combined forces of the American Continental Army and French Army, under the command of General Washington and Comte de Rochambeau respectively, encircled the British forces at Yorktown, Virginia. The British, led by General Charles Cornwallis, find themselves trapped, outnumbered, and outmaneuvered. After weeks of intense fighting, Cornwallis surrenders. The siege of Yorktown proves to be the decisive victory of the Revolution, effectively ending major military operations. However, it is not until 2 years later, in 1783, that the war officially comes to an end. Representatives from the United States and Great Britain convene in Paris to negotiate peace. The result is the Treaty of Paris, a landmark agreement that recognizes the sovereignty of the United States and establishes its western boundary at the Mississippi River. The treaty also ensures the rights of American fishermen in the Atlantic Ocean and requires the British to vacate forts in the Northwest Territory. This document, signed on September 3, 1783, marks the end of the American Revolution. It's more than just a piece of paper, it's the birth certificate of a new nation. The United States of America is now a sovereign entity, independent from Great Britain. It's a victory not just for the generals and soldiers on the battlefield, but for every American who dared to dream of a life free from tyranny. As the ink dries on the Treaty of Paris, the world watches in awe. The American Revolution had not only changed the political map of the world, but it had also ignited a spark of liberty that would inspire countless revolutions to come. With the signing of the Treaty of Paris, the American Revolution had come to an end and a new nation was born. The United States of America, born from the fires of revolution, had achieved its hard-fought victory and independence. The American Revolution was a pivotal event in world history, marking the birth of a new nation and setting the stage for future revolutions. This revolution, fueled by an inherent desire for freedom and equality, was rooted in the oppressive policies of the British Crown. The colonists' frustrations simmered and eventually boiled over into full-fledged rebellion. The spark that ignited the American Revolution was a combination of political ideology, economic motivations, and the simple human longing for liberty and self-determination. As the revolution unfolded, the tide of war ebbed and flowed. The colonists, though initially underdogs, persevered through trials and tribulations. Their resilience, coupled with strategic alliances, ultimately turned the tide in their favor. The victory was not merely a military triumph, but a moral one too. It signified the triumph of the human spirit, the victory of the underdog over the established power. The colonists, now citizens of a new nation, had effectively demonstrated the power of unity, resilience, and the indomitable spirit of freedom. The American Revolution ushered in a new era, not just for America, but for the entire world. It was the bellwether for future revolutions and movements fighting for equality and freedom. It proved that change was possible, that tyranny could be toppled, and that a people united could indeed birth a nation. The American Revolution was a testament to the power of a people united in their desire for freedom and independence.